Hey, and welcome back to the long-awaited episode 5 of the Disneyland train station recreation. Today we're working on the two side awnings of the station, and this is the longest I've worked on any of the parts of this build by far. I had around 20 hours of footage to go through for this one seemingly small part of the build. And so that is why today's episode is longer. The reason there's been such a delay is I was off in college and I did not have a PC with me, so that I was unable to do Planko. But I had all of this done long before I left, so all I had to do was get the footage in, and we're right back into it. I should have more of these videos coming out pretty soon, until hopefully we're done with this before I have to go back to college again. So today we are starting off, as I said, on these side awning parts of the build. And the reason this took so long is there's just a ton of little details. You can see me making these brackets by hand, doing all the gutters by hand, and even these little columns that seem simple on the outside actually took a lot of work, a lot of hydro beams to get just right. This part was also harder because it has an interior, and that you can see on the video on the right. I have to get the inside of this looking good as well as the outside, which is not something I had to worry about on the other parts. The other parts I could just have pieces sticking into the build here and there, but here I really had to be careful in everything I did. Once again, the Fresh Baked YouTube channel had all of the footage I would ever need to do this recreation, and it just took a lot of scouring YouTube for videos until I could find the exact right views of stuff. Here we're starting on the roof. Stuff like this is tricky and kind of takes a lot of time to get right the first time, but then once I have one section of this balcony, I was able to just copy and paste it down. So it's really about getting the first part right, and then you know that all the pieces you copy down will also be correct. You'll also notice that there are quite a few jumps in the footage, and that's just because each little bit took a ton of time, and while watching me figure out every single piece and exactly what I need to do isn't nearly as interesting as watching the final solution to it. So I do cut in and out a bit, just showing the more interesting parts and saving you another 20 minutes of boring footage. Here we're starting on the first little window roof ornamentation thing. These came out really well. They really add to the look of the roof and help break up just this long flat area. You'll also notice that there are some lights on the main train station. Those were kind of a temporary thing just to see how they would look. I did end up getting rid of them, so by the end of the episode, once they're gone, that's why. I just wasn't totally happy with them. I am going to have to figure out a solution for the end, because I would like to have the nighttime lights, it's just those specific ones are a bit big. Now you can see we're just tidying up the roof tiles on top of these windows, and there was something that I didn't really think of until the end, actually, after I'd already built these windows, but I ended up adding a little bit of trim onto the front of them, and it really helped sell the look. So here, I think they look good, but by the end, you'll see we put a little bit of extra hydro beams on there just to really cap off the ends and make it look extra nice. Now we're starting to tackle some of that interior work that I was talking about with these orange wooden beams that span the length of this overhang. And then every fifth pillar under here has this little special cross beam with some more lovely little ornamentation on it. So I made sure to count out the right number of beams so that everything lines up nicely, and then put in these extra details onto the other side as well. And now you can see we're finally ready to start copy and pasting. And those lines I put on the floor at the beginning actually show me where each column should go, and then the red line in the middle was just to make sure that all the windows were also centered up. And so by doing this, I know I have the right number of windows, the right number of columns, and everything will line up nicely to the billboard I have on the floor. I did the roof separately just so that all the little shingles would line up. Otherwise there would have been some intersecting at the join between each of the sections. So I just did that separately to make sure I kept that pattern, and then copy and pasted the windows and the beams separately as well. Then you can see me there using those red lines underneath to make sure those are all in the right spot. Once I had that, it was pretty simple, just copying that onto the other side. If Planet Coaster had a mirror tool, this would have been approximately 3 seconds of work, but unfortunately no such luck, and I had to do everything pretty much twice. That part you just saw there wasn't too bad, but where I really wish I had a mirror tool was for these end buildings. These were an absolute nightmare, and were probably, I would say, half the amount of time for this episode went just purely into making these. You'll see why they were such a terrible thing to build in a second. This part was a little finicky, just getting all these pillars in the right spot, but then once we get to the roof of this one and the interior, it was just hours of making sure all these hydro beams lined up exactly the way they do in real life. This part was also the hardest because there's the least amount of reference material. Most people, when they film the railroad, they film the queue and then they get on the ride, but very few people film themselves going down the exit. I'm not sure why, but yeah, people don't seem to record this part much, so it's kind of a lot of surfing the web to try to find good angles of this little end building, but eventually I did find what I needed. See, stuff like this is just such a pain when you can't select the pieces you want, and it just becomes an absolute mess. Just a lot of dealing with little things like that this time around. Here you can see I'm just kind of using the end of this POV of the railroad, then pausing it, and then I get this nice view of the side of this end tower area. And as always, all the gutters are actually gutters. I made those all with hydro beams, and I make sure they all line up at the corners, just for that unnecessary added detail, to just take this one over the edge a bit. And then once I had all that cleaned up, it was just about time to start working on the roof. Here you can see, starting on the roof, we've got these diagonal beams that are the edges of the roof, and then I just put in some arch shapes to kind of line up where everything was going to be. Here I bring in that roof texture that we use on the main part of the station because, of course, Disney decided to use this crazy roof pattern on these side buildings as well. So you can see me trying to make the corners here. Originally I did try to see if I could just copy one of the corners from the station roof, but unfortunately I did end up having to do this all over again. I also made sure to line up everything at the right height so that I had the right number of stripes going up the roof. So on the right you can see there's 3 of the light brown stripes and then just the 4th one peeking out at the top. So I made sure to get that exact as well. Then with a little bit of copy pasting magic, I had pretty much the whole block of the roof done. And then it came to the painstaking interior work, as you can see beginning here. Getting all these beams to line up all one by one was just not an enjoyable time. Yeah, I mean, I got through it, but I never want to ever have to do the interior of a roof like this ever again. Took a lot of trial and error to get everything lined up right, to get all the angles of this roof right. So I would end up taking out little chunks of the roof onto the side, seeing if everything lined up right, and then I would end up sliding the beams in and then getting them all to line up. This part here was definitely the hardest. This is a corner, it's sort of an interior roof corner, where if you were looking at the exterior of this, I wouldn't have to clean anything up because the roofs would just stick inside. This is kind of hard to explain, but because this is an interior, this point where the roofs meet was just a nightmare, and I had to individually line up each beam, as you can see I'm doing here, and there was really no trick or other way about it. The beams literally had to line up exactly. And so one by one, I'd go for my little stencil outside, bring in a little hydro beam, and then move them all accordingly so I get this diagonal line where the two roofs meet. And then once I had the main bulk of the roof in, I had to put in all the little orangey wooden beams again that we have throughout the rest of the building. And those were nice because those helped cover up the little gaps I had on that interior corner. And they really helped just, as Adam Savage would say, they really helped hide some of the crimes in the roof, places where it wasn't quite perfect. And the really fun part of this is I had to do this all over again on the other side because it's mirrored, so I couldn't just copy and paste everything over there. There were little things I was able to copy and paste over, but for example, that diagonal corner, I had to do that all over again on the other side of this build. Here we're putting in that diagonal beam to cover up that corner and make it look all nice and polished. And this came out really well. And by this point you can see I've done it to both sides. Both sides have their little interior wooden beams done. And now I got to start on something a little bit more fun, which was the windows on these outside tower parts. So I started off by taking one of the smaller windows that we made earlier, and then I'm just going to elaborate on this to make it into that larger window. And then, like many of the other parts, it was just a matter of getting one of these done, and then I was able to just copy this to the other sides. This building also has some nice little corner details on it, which I just did again out of hydro beams. Nice little wavy pattern at the little corners of the roof. And this part I did skip through a bit, but you could see there that I had finished the tops of that roof. And then here's the little trim part I was talking about at the beginning. Just this little bit of brown and then the tan underneath really just adds so much to these windows, and I think it looks so much better with that little detail added. And then I just copy and pasted those to the other windows. And now we get to start on the final little bit of detail for the episode. This was doing all of the railings and all the fence work under these balconies. So at this point, everything up above was done, and it was just a matter of polishing up the interior and getting all the little details in there. This is all done using the smallest hydro beam, which I think is the 2 centimeter by 2 centimeter. So this stuff is very small. And again, I just use the train ride footage to see where all this goes and how all the different fences look. There you can see another little jump in footage where I've done the back fence and the side fencing. And then I hop over to these large gates at the exit for the ride. And I just made these little fake hinges out of more hydro beams. Then I made one gate. I realized it was a little too long, so I had to adjust and make sure that the 2 gates would meet at a nice little joint in the middle. And you can see that here. Then I added this little pin that they put in the ground to keep the gates closed when they're closed, and they pull that out, and that allows the gates to open up. And then there's this cool little detail on the side where the fence does a little half circle. So originally I tried to do this freehand, and then I realized that it would be best to do one of the rotating tricks by putting down a pillar and then just doing it on the gridded system. So I make the outer circle here, and then I just add that to the spokes that I made, and then that'll just fit nicely right there. And luckily this was another one we could just flip around and then copy paste to the other side, so not too much work there. And then last but not least was making the little push gates for people that enter the ride and then want to leave. And that just has a little bar that you push down, and then it opens up the gate that then leads to the exit. So to make this, I just kind of cut the fence. I counted the amount of vertical iron rods in the fence in the YouTube video, and then I knew where the gate should start and where the gate should end and how wide it should be and all that stuff. And then all I had to do was just add some more hydro beams to it to make it look as it does in real life. And here's where I'm building the little box around the push bar mechanism. And then the little boxes on the right of the gate are the little things that hold it against the rest of the fence. I was hoping to make the bar round, but there weren't any small enough pieces, so it did end up being square, but I think it looks just fine. Had to make a few adjustments to mirror this one on the other side, but not too bad. And then that was pretty much all the building. The last little touches were just putting in some beams where the chains would go that separate the queue, but that was pretty much it. That was a ton of footage, a ton of hours, so I apologize for the length of this video, but there really was that much that had to be built for this part of the build. And one final thing I did, which was totally unnecessary, but just to make it look a little better in the cinematics, I did put down the brick texture for the platform, just to kind of frame the scene a bit. and this is actually what I will continue on in the next episode, is working on the platform, the hill and the floral Mickey in front of the station, and then the stairs and stuff in the back has turned out to be a real nightmare, so I'm not sure when that will be done, but I definitely have some good video to show of making all the stuff in front of the station for next time. Here we are, finally at the cinematics. I apologize again for the length between these videos, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this longer video with all this detail and all this work into these side balconies. I'm really happy that now the actual building of the station is done. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. I really think it's the best thing I've ever made in this game, and I really hope you guys think so too. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoy this series, do subscribe so that you can catch the next one as well. And yeah, thanks again for watching, and have a good one.